I found texts between my husband and my best friend. They weren't having an affair, but what they said about me was somehow worse. I've been staring at this draft for 3 days. Every time I get close to posting it, I talk myself out of it. But I need somewhere to put this because it's eating me alive and the people in my real life are too close to it to be objective. So here it is. I kicked my best friend of 14 years out of my house 2 months ago. She had nowhere to go. She was 3 months pregnant. And part of me, the part I'm most ashamed of, felt relieved when she left. I need you to understand who we were before I tell you what happened, because if I just start from the end, I sound like a monster. Danny and I met freshman year of college. We were assigned to the same orientation group and ended up talking for 4 hours straight in the campus cafeteria while everyone else went to the welcome mixer. She was funny in this dry, understated way that snuck up on you. She'd say something completely absurd with a straight face and then just blink at you while you processed it. I laughed more in those 4 hours than I had in the entire last year of high school. We became the kind of friends who don't need to explain themselves. Inside jokes that had inside jokes. The kind of friendship where you can sit in total silence for an hour and it doesn't feel weird, it just feels like home. After college, we both ended up in the same city, not on purpose, just luck, and we shared an apartment for 2 years. Then I met Marcus. She met a guy named Joel. We both moved in with our respective partners, stayed close, had standing Sunday brunch every other week without fail. Joel and Danny broke up after 3 years. It was bad. He'd been emotionally checked out for most of the last year of it, and she'd spent that year making herself smaller and quieter trying to hold it together. When it finally ended, she was hollowed out in a way that scared me. She lost weight she didn't have to lose. She stopped responding to texts for days at a time. I drove to her apartment once because she hadn't answered in 48 hours and I found her in bed with the curtains closed at 2 in the afternoon, surrounded by delivery containers, watching the same show on a loop. That was 18 months ago. Marcus and I had talked vaguely about converting our spare room into a home office. We'd never actually done it. It was just a room with a desk we never used and boxes we never unpacked. So when Danny's lease came up 6 months after the breakup and she admitted she was struggling financially, Joel had handled most of the rent and she'd never fully rebuilt her own financial footing, I brought it up with Marcus. She can stay in the spare room, I said. Just until she gets back on her feet. Marcus was quiet for a second. Not the processing it quiet. The other kind. How long is until she gets back on her feet, he asked. I told him I didn't know. A few months, maybe. She just needed stability. He said okay. I want to be really honest here, because I've thought about this a lot since everything fell apart. Marcus said okay, but he didn't say yes. There's a difference, and I didn't listen for it. The first 2 months were fine. Great, even. Danny was visibly better with company around her. She cooked elaborate dinners sometimes, like, really cooked, not just pasta, but actual involved recipes that made the whole apartment smell incredible. She was thoughtful about space, always asking before using something, always replacing things she used up. She and Marcus got along. Not close, but comfortable. They'd watch TV together if I was working late. She made him laugh sometimes with her dry humor. I started to feel like I'd made the right call. Month 3 is where I first noticed something and filed it away under probably nothing. Marcus started coming home later. Not drastically, 20, 30 minutes, but consistently. When I mentioned it, he said work was busy. I believed him because work had genuinely been busy before and I had no reason not to. But once or twice, I noticed he seemed lighter when he came in. Not tired from work light. Something else. I pushed it down. Around the same time, Danny started spending more time in her room. Not in the withdrawn, curtains closed way from before, this was different. She was on her phone a lot. Smiling at her phone. She'd come out for dinner and be distracted in that specific way people are when they're in the early stages of something new. I asked her if she was seeing someone. She got a little flustered, said no, just talking to someone, nothing serious. I said that's exciting, and I meant it. I genuinely meant it. The thing about a slow unraveling is that you can feel it happening and still not stop it. Like watching a glass tip over in slow motion and being somehow unable to move. Small things started accumulating. Marcus and I had a fight about something minor, I don't even remember what, and he said something in the middle of it that stopped me cold. He said, "You make decisions for both of us and then act surprised when I have a reaction." It was such a specific sentence. So precise. Not the way people talk when they're just venting. It was a thought he'd had before, shaped quietly over time, and it came out clean and rehearsed. I asked him if he'd been talking to someone about us. About our relationship. He hesitated just a beat too long. "Just processing," he said. "I have thoughts. I'm allowed to have thoughts." I let it go. But I noticed. Then one Sunday, a Thursday, actually, we'd moved brunch to Thursday because Danny had picked up a freelance project. I arrived at the cafe first. I was looking at my phone when they walked in together. I didn't think anything of it, we all lived in the same apartment, it made sense they'd come from the same direction. But they were mid-conversation when they came through the door. Not just walking next to each other quiet. Talking. And they both shifted slightly when they saw me looking up. Just slightly. The conversation stopped at a natural-ish point, but it stopped. I ordered my usual. We had a perfectly normal brunch. Danny was funny. Marcus was warm. I laughed at least twice. On the walk home, I felt like I was going to throw up. I didn't confront anyone. I know that's the thing people always say on Reddit, why didn't you just ask? And I've asked myself that 1,000 times. The honest answer is that I was afraid. Not afraid of what they'd say. Afraid of what I already knew without being able to prove it. So instead of asking, I watched. And what I found was so much more complicated than what I expected. I went through Marcus's phone. I'm not proud of it. I'd never done it before in 7 years. I waited until he was in the shower and I went through it quickly, hands shaking, feeling like a completely different person than who I thought I was. There were texts from Danny. A lot of them. Going back about 6 weeks. They weren't romantic. That was the first thing I registered, and it hit me with this confusing wave of relief that immediately curdled into something worse. They were talking about me. Not cruelly. That's the part that's hardest to explain. It wasn't nasty or conspiratorial. It was two people who cared about me, talking about me with a level of intimacy that I'd never been part of. Marcus venting about feeling sidelined in his own home. Danny validating him. Marcus asking how she handled me when I got like this, and she knew exactly what this meant, answered without asking for clarification. Danny telling him things about my past, about my patterns, about why I do the things I do, things I'd told her in confidence over 14 years of friendship. And Marcus, reading them, understanding me through her words in a way he'd apparently never felt he could understand me through my own. There was one message that I've probably read 100 times since. Marcus had written, "Sometimes I feel like I'm in a relationship with her version of herself, not actually her." And Danny had written back, "I know. I've felt that too, sometimes. She doesn't always let people in all the way. You just have to decide if the version you get is enough." I put the phone down. I sat on the bathroom floor. I didn't cry. I just sat there. Here's the twist, and I hate that I'm calling it a twist, because it makes my life sound like content, but I don't know what else to call it. 3 days after I found those texts, Danny knocked on my bedroom door and asked if we could talk. She sat on the edge of my bed. She looked like she hadn't slept. She told me she was pregnant. Not by Marcus. I want to be completely clear, I verified this, asked directly, and I believe the timeline. The father was the person she'd been just talking to, a guy she'd met online, a brief and apparently intense few weeks, and then he'd disappeared when she told him. She was terrified. She was 10 weeks along. She didn't know what she was going to do. And she was telling me because I was her best friend and she had no one else. I held it together in the room. I hugged her. I said we'd figure it out. I said she wasn't alone. Then I went to the kitchen, stood over the sink, and I felt something I'm deeply ashamed of, anger. Not sympathy. Not even the complicated mix of both. Pure, ugly anger, because I'd been about to confront her, I'd been building up to it for days, and now she'd handed me something that made it impossible. There was no version of me that could come at a pregnant woman going through abandonment with also I read your texts and felt betrayed. She'd accidentally defused me. And some part of me resented her for it. I said nothing about the texts. The next 4 weeks were the most exhausting of my life. I was caring for Danny, emotionally, practically, being the person she called at 11 p.m. when she couldn't stop crying, while simultaneously sitting with the thing I'd found and couldn't unfind. Marcus and I weren't fighting, but we were performing. We were both very careful with each other in the way you are when you're both holding something. He didn't know I'd seen the texts. I didn't tell him. I started therapy, partially because I was unraveling, partially because I needed somewhere to say things out loud that I couldn't say in my own home. My therapist asked me something in our 3rd session that I keep coming back to. She asked, "What specifically hurt you most about what you read?" And I sat with it for a long time and I said, that he understood me better through her than through me. And that she let him. She asked, "Do you think that's something they did to you, or something you made necessary?" I didn't answer. I just cried for the rest of the session. The climax, if you can call it that, happened on a Tuesday night. I'd had a long day. I came home to find Danny and Marcus sitting at the kitchen table together, laptops open, apparently helping her research some options about the pregnancy and finances. It was genuinely kind of him. I know that. I could see it was kind. But I'd had it. I don't know exactly what broke. Something just gave way. I put my bag down, very quietly, and I asked Marcus if he could give us a minute. He looked between us and left the room. I sat across from Danny and I told her I'd seen the texts. I told her calmly, not screaming, not crying. Just clearly. I told her what I'd seen, when I'd seen it, and what specifically hurt me about it. I told her that 14 years of friendship and everything I'd shared with her was not a resource for someone else to draw on to understand me. That my patterns, my wounds, my history, she'd given those to him like they were hers to give. She went white. Then she started crying. Hard. And she said, "I was trying to help him love you better." And I said, "That wasn't yours to do." We sat in silence for a long time. Then she said something that I've been turning over ever since. She said, "You know I love you. But you've never once, in 14 years, asked me if I was okay with being your emotional support system. You just assumed I was okay with it. And then you got to leave and go build a life with Marcus and I was still just, your person. On call. And yeah, I talked to him. Because he was the only one asking how I actually was. I didn't have a clean response to that. I still don't. She moved out 2 weeks later. Not because I threw her out exactly, it wasn't a screaming match, there were no ultimatums, but because we both knew she couldn't stay. I helped her find a short-term sublet. I gave her the first month's rent because she was terrified about money. She took it. We hugged at the door and both cried. She's keeping the baby. She texted me that a few weeks ago. I replied with a heart. I don't know what else we are right now. Marcus and I are still together. Still in therapy, separately and now together. It's slow and uncomfortable and some sessions I leave feeling worse than when I went in. He apologized for the texts, genuinely, I think. He said he should have come to me instead of to her. I believe him and I also know that the fact he needed to go to her at all means something I'm still figuring out. I don't have a clean ending. I'm sorry if you came here for one. What I have is this, I thought I was a good friend. Generous, loyal, always there. And I think in a lot of ways I was. But I also think I treated Danny's presence in my life as a given. Like a utility that didn't need tending because it had always just worked. I poured into her when she was visibly broken and I called that love, and it was love, it just wasn't the whole picture. Because the whole picture includes 14 years of me assuming she was fine because she was funny and capable and present. It includes me never once asking what she needed. It includes me calling her my best friend while never really interrogating what I was to her. The thing she said, "You never asked if I was okay with it," that one lives in my chest now. I carry it around. And Marcus's text, "Sometimes I feel like I'm in a relationship with her version of herself," I carry that one too. I don't think I'm a villain. But I don't think I'm the wronged party either. I think I'm just a person who got comfortable. And comfort, when it goes unexamined, is its own kind of slow damage. If you made it this far, I don't even know what I'm asking. I guess I just needed to say it somewhere. Maybe you can tell me what you see that I can't.